23andMe on the verge of getting delisted now from the NASDAQ.
What?
Drama has been unfolding this week. It's only set to ramp up.
23andMe built a multi-billion-dollar brand off of collecting people's spit. The idea was that people could take control of their health by learning about their genetics. And it took off. But just 2 years after going public, the company went from being valued at $6 billion to trading below $1. Now, 23andMe is rapidly approaching a November deadline to propose an action plan or be delisted from the NASDAQ. So how did one of the most disruptive startups of the 2000s go from Silicon Valley stardom to a penny stock? And can its CEO save the company from collapse?
Very scary. So as far as I remember, I think 23andMe was around since 2006. I remember when they came out, I was fresh out of college, and I heard about this 23andMe because they did some type of party, something with the celebrity. So not even 20 years yet, but they've been around, really hyped them up. So they went public 2 years ago, and now it's a penny stock. It's ridiculous. And I know a lot of people were super excited about 23andMe. Oh, I'm finding out my lineage. People saying that they had background from all over the world. Really didn't make sense to me. I even heard, I'm not even going to get all the way into it. Let's see what they got to say about this, because this doesn't even make sense to me. I just need to know what's going on with people's DNA.
23andMe was founded in 2006 by Ann Wojcicki, Linda Avey, and Paul Kuzenza.
The mission of the company was pretty straightforward. They set out to give consumers an easy and inexpensive way to access their genetic information. So they did this by developing a DNA test that you can really kind of take from anywhere.
Looks nice.
It's an online test. You go online, you order it. We send you a little tube. You spit in the tube. You send it back to us. We extract the DNA out of that. And then we look at 1 million data points in your DNA. And from that, we can tell you a ton of information about your health and also about your ancestry.
Be honest, seems extremely, extremely valuable, right? 1 million points in your DNA, excellent selling point, for a lot of people that are trying to figure out like who they really are, where they come from. There's so many people that, may know their parents or their families from Europe, but they still don't really know. Like you ask people like, where are you from? They don't know. A lot of
Today, this isn't all that different from competitors like Ancestry and Family Tree DNA, but 23andMe was one of the first to bring genetics testing directly to consumers at an affordable price. By 2012, the company was able to lower the cost of its kit from $999 to $299.
Yeah, nice.
This was thanks to capital from high-profile backers. One of them was Wojcicki's then partner, Google co-founder Sergey Brin.
Anne is a really connected person in Silicon Valley, and
okay, so her partner back then from Google. So large database information, a library. Now we're getting a library of DNA from people all around the world. Okay. Just want to see where this is going, but understanding the origins is important. But I could see a few use cases here.
she understood how to leverage star power in a way that would also help to build 23andMe's brand. So in 2008, for instance, the company famously held what they called a spit party. So during New York Fashion Week, a bunch of celebrities and high-profile guests came and gave a saliva sample, generated a ton of buzz and attention around the company.
Sales started booming. The company announced it had genotyped 1 million customers. And in 2015, the company gained FDA approval to provide more in-depth health information to customers. And in 2016, it finally lowered the price of its kits to $99.
I think that every technology, it takes a while for adoption. Now it's suddenly become relatively normal. People share their stories online.
Celebrity endorsements kept pouring in, and the company was named one of CNBC's top disruptors of 2018.
And thanks so much for joining us here today. Congrats on your spot on the list, in the top 10, no less.
And during this period, 23andMe was quite...
So again, here we go with celebrities coming behind the product. We got big tech behind this. Then we have celebrities behind this. Everyone's super excited about it. It's like, oh, well, big tech's behind it. Celebrities are behind it. You know, the regular people that are easily influenced are like, well, I might as well do this. Not to say that that's the reason, but again, it still makes it feel like, oh, this is safe if everyone else is doing it. And plus, you know, you're really curious about your background. You know, you always gotta be a little leery about these endorsements from certain people. And like, why? Why are we doing this? Now we got down to $99 in 2016. That's pretty cheap.
quietly building a massive database of genetic information.
You may wonder what happens to all that genetic data that people send into the company. Well, the Silicon Valley giant now has the world's largest database for genetic research. 4 million customers have given them permission to use their DNA to study genetic diseases.
The company partnered with several pharmaceutical companies and universities to study genetic links in diseases like depression. But customers began to raise concerns around privacy. In 2018, a serial killer cold case was solved using DNA from 23andMe. The company had also started to face problems with recurring revenue.
There hasn't been a sustainable business model. It's the kind of test that you take once.
Sales of 23andMe's test kits declined 46% in 2019 compared to a year earlier. The company laid off 100 employees in an effort to cut costs. But Wojcicki still hoped to move the...
Wow, I'm sure when people saw, though, that they were able to find a serial killer, it was like, oh, well, that's good. We're able to actually leverage DNA to find and solve crimes. But I'm not sure what type of paperwork people signed when they said they were going to get their DNA. I'm sure people said, I'm going to hand you my DNA to do research for me. I'm pretty sure the fine print is where they gave them the permission unknowingly to then use that information to do all types of crazy stuff with it. This is where you got to be careful with the fine print. I hear that. I think one of my sons came up with this idea where we need, or maybe it's somewhere that's going to be coming out that, we want to minimize the fine print. Oh, he was complaining about in gaming, right? In video games, you might get a new game in today's day and age, not like back, in the 80s and 90s when you get a new game, you look at the, I'm getting off track, but let's get back to this. Got to minimize the fine print. It's just too much.
The company beyond selling DNA tests.
And so now we're really at a point in time where I'm ready to, explode. Like there's huge opportunities on therapeutics and huge opportunities for our consumer business.
So 23andMe wanted to leverage this genetic database that it had accumulated because, millions of people are taking this test. They have a lot of valuable data. But the fact of the matter is that therapeutics, drug development, drug discovery, it's just really hard.
And extremely expensive. One recent study estimates that drug development in the US can range anywhere from $314 million to $4.46 billion and can take years to reach patients. Wojcicki's solution.
Wow. So what I'm saying right now is they spun off. Now they said, okay, well, we have these clients, the end user where, we sell them a kit one time, they figure out their lineage and their background potentially. And I think I've heard some variances and discrepancies there where people are like, I've taken the test twice and then they gave me completely different results. We don't know. It sounds like a ChatGPT hallucination from AI, right? Potentially, we think this is what it is, and then next week or next year you come back when we think this is what it is now. So who's to say that the information that they ever gave you was correct? All right, so I think this story is a little older. I just kind of wanted to get up to speed what was really going on about a month ago. Let's switch over to the next video. I want to see what's going on now because so many stories are coming out. I'm like, I gotta see what's going on with 23andMe. I knew something was wrong here.
Earlier this week, 23andMe's CEO warned investors that there was substantial doubt that the company could keep operating, announcing it was cutting 40% of its workforce, 200 jobs, and it will stop development of its therapeutics division. The stock price cratering 75% this year.
Wow.
And while the company says it is looking to go private and isn't looking to sell, some customers may be concerned about their very personal data.
For people who want to erase their accounts with 23andMe.
Losing 75% of your value in 1 year, and then we do and then you wait till the end of the year. I hate these companies that do that, right? Like all these companies seem to want to wait till the end of the year, and they know that okay, well that's the end of we want to get clean up the books, get people off the books, and then clean up the quarter. But at the end of the year, we know it's holiday season. We're going into a new year. I guess business is business. They just don't care about people, right?
Is that possible?
Yeah, so in the privacy policy, it does say that individuals can request for their account to be closed. And if that happens, they delete the sample and delete the account.
The financial update comes just 2 months after the company settled a class action lawsuit stemming from a 2023 cyber attack. Data for 6.9 million customers was posted on the dark web. 23andMe agreeing to pay $30 million.
You hear so much about these cyber attacks. Everybody uses a cyber attack as an excuse. You know, they steal your data all the time, but you never hear they catch the people, right? Who performed the cyber attacks? Why is cybersecurity jobs like going up, but nobody's really catching any? Well, maybe they do, but like still, there's nothing really happening with these cyber attacks. Your information is just gone. You don't know what they're doing with it. It could be another you in another country purchasing homes. That's why you got to really be careful and monitor your credit. Right now, you got to monitor what they're doing with your DNA. You might walk around and see a clone of you. Like, wait a minute. And you might say, well, how could they have a clone that looks like you and be the same age? That's for another video. You know, right?
$1 million and give those customers 3 years of security monitoring. In a statement this week, 23andMe says, we are committed to protecting customer data and are consistently focused on maintaining the privacy of our customers. That will not change. The future of their business may depend on it. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News.
So as we just saw, 23andMe is putting millions of its customers at risk. Their data is at risk. There's nothing that can really be done to ensure that their data and their information is not going to be used in a nefarious way, right? So what I wanted to do was put together like a quick set of slides to kind of summarize what we heard today. I think it's very, very important, right? So customer data concerns. So one of the concerns that they talked about is really that, and I think it's concerning, that the customer has a huge data set of DNA, and that's one of their most valuable assets at this point. They lost 75, almost 90% of their value, and they're basically kicked off the stock exchange by the end of the year, right? They just went bankrupt today, I believe. I looked at another video. But that's a huge liability for its customers. And essentially, they did just go bankrupt. And if there is an acquisition, their information could be sold off. Concern number 2, unlike healthcare companies, 23andMe is not subject to health privacy laws. Huge, huge, huge. So you're not covered. So if your information is over there, there is no law that says that they can't sell your information or do whatever they want with it, leaving the customer DNA data potentially vulnerable. And it is vulnerable. Like, we already know that these companies are not really the most scrupulous, right? I don't know any. At the end of the day, it's really about money. And if there's anyone that invested in this company, they're going to be trying to figure out, like, okay, now what next, right? The business failed. We went on the stock exchange like 2 years ago. We crashed. Now it's penny stock. We're going to sell this bad boy. And then what do we do with this huge asset of data? And then customers can delete their account. And they're saying that the information won't necessarily, your personal information, like your name, your straw man, is not going to be attached to the information. So I think in their minds, they feel like, well, no one really knows who you are. Yeah, but now we got your DNA. Like, we know exactly who you are, what your makeup is. And there's a lot that they can do with that information. And there's nothing they can really do. But legally, like, you can go there to their site and delete your information, but they're saying legally they have to hold it for a period of time. So here's some of the things I believe that they can do with it, monetizing the DNA database. So first and foremost, they can sell or license the data. So they can partner with pharmaceutical companies and biotech firms for research purposes, and they already started to do that, right? So I'm into the emerging technology, so artificial intelligence, right? AI uses large language models, right? Now they have a biological set of data that they can use. They've been building for close to 20 years that they can leverage that DNA, and this is how they're going to partner with the pharmaceutical companies or the robotic companies and these companies to really figure out, like, how are we going to use this DNA to kind of figure out. Here's the thing: they can do things for the good of society, but then they can also do some nefarious things. So, licensing those data sets to AI companies for genetic research and algorithm training. Number 2 is develop proprietary AI tools so they can analyze genetic data and create productive healthcare models, which could be good, right? So then we can figure out, like, okay, well, based on this set of DNA, it might be by race or genetic or whatever, and figure out, okay, so these people might be predisposed for this particular disease. Let's create some models to figure out, like, how we can create pharmaceutical products to now, help these people or create medicine for that. It could also be used the other way around for targeting. They can build disease detection algorithms to sell as diagnostic tools. Another thing they can do is strategic partnerships, like I said, about collaborating with robotic companies and medical I don't want to name any companies. I already know a few that, again, are using AI-powered robots for genome editing, like CRISPR, right? And they want to edit DNA. They can form alliances with hospitals and research institutions to integrate genetic insights into their AI healthcare solutions. So that's one of the places I know for sure that they want to leverage artificial intelligence to really create a use case to show people like, hey, you should like artificial intelligence because it's helping people live longer. Healthcare is where we're first going to start to see, wow, we were able to create this model because we had a bunch of data and we were able to figure out how to solve this particular problem because we understand the genome now. And now we have cures to multiple diseases. That's huge. That's a good thing. But the way they went about collecting the data, they probably said, well, we have no other way. We needed to get information from people and have them sign off to saying that we can leverage their DNA in the fine print. Some of the hidden implications that this could have, negative implications, I think, life insurance. So I think I already heard the story when someone said they were like denied life insurance because of, they might have information around that person's DNA, right? So higher premiums, genetic risk factors could lead to unaffordable premiums, denial of coverage. You can have a genetic underclass, a systematic exclusion of individuals with bad genes. And they won't necessarily tell you. These are things that sometimes happen behind the scenes, right? And so healthcare insurance, same thing. Reduced coverage, limited or excluded coverage for genetic predispositions. Increased costs, higher premiums tied to your genetics, right? If they have that information in the back end, yes, they say they kind of decoupled it from the back end, but let's say they already have this large language model of DNA, and a healthcare or insurance company tells you to go, get a blood test, and then they do some mapping and say that your DNA is closely tied to this particular model. Then you might say, okay, yeah, well, based on that, the risk is pretty high or it's lower. And so we can really play games with, what they're doing with that information in the back end. You just don't know. Privacy erosion. So loopholes in genetic privacy laws may allow for discrimination. And so that's why artificial intelligence, we need a lot of guidelines and rules behind this, and also, biogenetics and what they're going to be doing there. Employment and workplace benefits. So hiring discrimination, employers avoiding candidates with costly health risks. So they might, they check your credit. They do all types of things nowadays. They do, they send you to the doctor, depending on what role you have, right? And they say, you know what, no, we're not going to hire you for XYZ. Reduced benefits, limited access to employer-provided insurance for high-risk individuals, loss of opportunities. So genetic data misuse could exclude candidates from jobs. And finally, the financial industry. So we can see credit denials on genetic risks used to justify denying credit access. Higher interest rates, individuals with predispositions face stricter lending terms and reduced credit limits. So lower limits for those deemed high-risk borrowers because they might be genetically predispositioned and they might prove it with the AI and say, you know what, no, this is highly likely, and why give them that credit? They might actually run that up and not be able to pay it, or they may, God forbid, pass away in 4 years based on their age and based on the genetic models that we map that person against. So these are some of the implications that people don't really, it sounds unrealistic, but the way technology is going to ramp up in the next few years, we're going to move from not just artificial intelligence, but quantum computing and robotics. All these things are going to pick up, and we're going to see like this trifecta, and everything is just going to ramp up. When you think back like 100 years ago, right, and you think about today, you're like, wow, we've really advanced so much. So I don't think we'll be able to recognize, the world and the way it's going to look in the next 20 years, right? Depending on how old you are, things are going to change so rapidly that your head will spin. So some of the things that I'm talking about might seem unlikely now, but can very well become the future in the next few years. So with that, all I want to say is to, if you were one of their customers, make sure you kind of reach out to them, do everything that you can to minimize the risk on your side.